Yay Networks.
Welcome back to In the Cards and Stars. I'm your host, Brit Mogensen, and today we have a very special guest, someone that I have highly anticipated coming on because I love her Instagram, and now I also love her new podcast, Emma Frey from Patterns in the Stars, and her new podcast called Star Rolls. Emma, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, before we get into all of the fun things that we're going to talk about like how people look alike according to their zodiac signs and all of the fun things you do on your account, will you introduce us to you by your big three?
Sure. I am a airhead. So I'm a Gemini sun, Libra moon, double air, and then I have a Virgo rising.
Okay. So 2 airs and an earth. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And please tell everybody about your account, like what you do. I'm obsessed. It's what I scroll when I'm just hanging out. But yeah, tell us all about that in your new podcast, please.
Of course. So I run an Instagram account called Patterns in the Stars. It's been live since September 2021. And I post celebrity photos, celebrities who share the same planetary placements. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, I post celebrities that share the same big three, so the same sun, moon, and rising sign. And I call them my big three twin posts. But then I also share other posts that show people's moon signs, rising signs, and just similarities there. Basically, I didn't see this content a ton, and so I was floored by it and wanted to share it out. And then on top of that, I just launched a podcast called Star Rolls, in which I interview astrologers about the many roles the stars can play in benefiting people's lives. So my first episode that I just launched is about career and how the stars can help us along our career journeys, finding the best career or just job if you're someone that is more, say, family oriented. The stars can help us get there. And so that's the first episode. We get into other things like weekly planning and how the stars can help there. But yeah, very excited about that.
Well, it's so good. I know I told you that I was going to listen to the first episode, and it's a deep dive. So it's like an hour or so. And usually, I'll be honest, I'll stop after 30 minutes. I kept listening to the entire thing, and then I was like, I want more of this. You did such an interesting deep dive, and it's cool. It'll touch you on different levels. If you're listening to this and you love astrology, obviously you'll love it. So yeah, I love everything you create. It's very well researched, and I do love that you said this stuff wasn't out there, and it's true. It can be hard to find these comparisons. And I think what you do is really unique because you show, I like to call it like astrology in the wild, but like, astrology that we can recognize when we just kind of see it on paper. And with a lot of these celebrity pairs that you've done all this research and you've pulled together these people, sometimes, a modern celebrity and a celebrity from like the 1950s, and you'll put them together and you see just how alike they look, their aura, their vibe, even the way that they pose in photos. It's eerie. And it really gets this conversation started about our big three placements and how they affect the way that we look, the way that we move. So is there anything that you've noticed through just researching and seeing all these different pairings that has like struck you that maybe you like didn't think of before you got into all of the, like, just seeing it on paper?
Totally. I really appreciate that you talked about how you can see the auras are similar in the way they carry themselves, because when I first started doing this, I was like, so these people have the same facial features, they may have the same nose. And then as I got deeper into it, I was just like, they project the same kind of energy, and that's very compelling.
Yes.
Something that I'm looking at right now is actually digging a little deeper and looking at how the facial features and the auras can map back to the archetypal symbolism for that sign. So, I was looking at Cancer risings the other day, and I think they look like the moon emoji in the way that there's like, the craters and sunken in. And that relates back to the introversion of the Cancerian archetype. And so it's like, not only are we seeing someone who has a Cancer rising and they look the same, but it maps back to the archetypal qualities of the sign.
Interesting.
And
So like a deeper
yeah,
set, maybe like deep set eyes, like a deeper gaze where it kind of like
mhm,
pulls you in like the moon or something. I could see
exactly.
that. I could
Yeah.
so see that with Cancer risings.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm sorry, go ahead. You were saying something else next.
Well, I mean, that's about it. I have another example for that. Gemini is the curious sign, and I was watching Dairy Girls, which is just a fabulous comedy show if you've never seen it. But they said Michelle Pfeiffer looks like a cat, and I was like, she does,
Mhm.
and she's a Gemini rising, as are as are other people who I think kind of have those feline features. And there's something
Interesting.
we don't always connect the cat to Gemini, but there is something about curiosity killing the cat,
Yes.
mapping back to the story of Eve, and it gets interesting, and I go down rabbit holes. But I think there's a lot there that I'm having fun with and hope to bring to the table at some point.
Well, that is so cool. And like I just started jumping on that train with you. Do you find, which brings me to another tangent, do you find that having both Mercury or both Virgo and Gemini in your big three makes you like one of those people that does jump down rabbit holes of research and like I do that too.
Oh my gosh,
I do
what
that
is your
too.
big three? So you're a Virgo sun.
Virgo sun, Aquarius rising, Scorpio moon.
Okay, yeah,
And I will jump down a rabbit hole and then I won't like surface for 3 days. And
yeah.
I'm like, what did I just do? That was
It's like, oh, coming up for
was
air.
that even relevant to what I'm working on now? It's like, no,
Yeah,
an idea
right.
for later. Like, and with
Exactly.
astrology, it gets so complicated, which is why I love finding people like you who like you really specialized in this niche sector of looking at the facial features and facial like mapping. I also saw that you gave a talk and a presentation. I saw this on your Instagram about this part of astrology. And I think that's fascinating. Not a lot of people talk about how astrology or your birth chart will affect your facial features. So, are there any other things that you like notice, like about how this happens or why this happens or what it
Um,
even looks like if you're trying to look at your own chart and be like, do I look like that?
yeah. I come back to the, hermetic, as above, so below, as within, so without. And so at its core, I think that kind of can explain it. And what our soul map is, as read in our birth charts, can be projected outward, I think, in our appearances.
Mm.
And you're right in that people aren't talking about this as much, although in my presentation and all the research I did, I found that it used to be a bigger thing in the astrological community and then somehow kind of fell off. And I think that the rise of photography and the internet can help us get back to exploring it a little bit deeper. I also think it's an interesting time, and so for the why, I think we wouldn't be able to notice anything astrologically if the planets didn't want us to. And so I think we're at an interesting point, maybe in history. Pluto's about to go back into Aquarius. It dipped its toe in, and then
Mhm.
it'll be actually in Aquarius for a long time. Uranus is going to move into Gemini fairly soon. And I just think the stars want to say hello in maybe more overt ways, like
Oh, cool.
our appearances. So, yeah, I think, we're starting to, obviously, astrology is becoming more popular. And I think that this is maybe just the next step in terms of widening its popularity.
I love that. And what better way to bring awareness than through, celebrities and
Yeah,
like where everybody's like on your TV. So
exactly.
on that note, let's go through some of the posts that are on your Instagram account, Patterns in the
Let's
Stars.
do
Everybody,
it.
you guys can follow along if you want to go to her Instagram while you're listening to this. And let's talk about some of these big three, cosmic twins. I would love to start with Miley, Cyrus, and Aaron Rodgers.
Mhm.
Taurus rising, Sagittarius sun, Scorpio moon.
Yep.
Wow. These are not two people I would have ever put together,
No.
but when you see the photos, you're like, I see it.
Yes.
Like, wow. I would love to hear your interpretation
Yeah.
of how these two really do show that big three
I
winning.
I felt the same way. I was like, I never would have put these two together. But when I saw them side by side, I was like, oh, so okay, they share, I think, a similar nose, which I often associate with Taurus rising. It's a little bit fuller. And then I think their eyes as well, I think, are really similar. It's just the way that their gaze is, it's a little bit more intense. I think that's the Scorpio moon probably coming through. It's also like light colored, which I tend to associate with Scorpio moon,
Interesting.
although they don't all have that color. Yeah, I think also just kind of wide in general. I think two feminine signs at play. I think the feminine signs often show up as like the face becomes a little bit wider rather than it's hard to explain this. I'm using my hands, but I think that more masculine signs are a little bit sharper, more pointed, and there's a softness and a wideness to the more feminine signs.
That makes sense. And fun fact about Aaron Rodgers. So my husband was watching, I forgot what that show is. It's like, I don't know. It's about like the NFL and they go behind the scenes. And I was like, Aaron Rodgers was saying something, and I don't know, you're probably like this too. Something struck me about something he said, and I was like, I wonder what his birth chart placements are. And I started Googling while I'm sitting there, with him. And an article came up about Aaron Rodgers talking about how astrology is actually what helped him to like get to know himself and come like and find peace with his like true personality. And he gave a talk at like an astrological seminar. I was like,
oh my gosh,
blown away, had no clue. And then I was thinking that might be his Scorpio moon, very hidden.
Yep.
I've not heard him talk about that. But if you research and you dig in a little bit, you can find it. And apparently this is part of like his true hidden spiritual self, which is so Scorpio moon for it to not be out there.
Yeah. I knew that
for him to be interested.
Like he was into, I think, ayahuasca. I think I knew that. So it does make sense, bringing in astrology, but yeah, no idea. That's crazy.
And he comes across really Taurian, like just like solid, stable, just kind of like football. I don't know, like no frills football.
Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, so that was cool. And then we have, this is another funny one that's just gonna kind of blow people away, I think, when they see it. Brad Pitt and Sarah Silverman, Sagittarius rising, Sagittarius sun, Capricorn moon. I mean, and your caption's hilarious. You're like, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Yeah. And it's so true. Hey guys, it's Brit. So quick emergency editing note. Look at what I found while I was looking for some additional photos of Brad Pitt and Sarah Silverman. Can you believe that this came out in 2019? Just another example of astrology in the wild. Now back to the episode.
Yeah. I mean, again, you're like, those two? Really? But I think that, so the Sagittarius, I think, comes through. It's like hard to talk about this sometimes without sounding offensive, but like equine features, like you can see it in the nose. There's a little bit of regality, like horseness, I think, coming through. I
mean, and of course, if this is one of your placements, don't be offended. You look like Brad Pitt too, and horses are beautiful. So just saying.
Yeah. And going back to what I said,
there is a length and a strength. Like I like that length kind of that you're saying. It's a longer feature.
Yeah.
Sure.
And we all have like animal, qualities coming from our signs.
Totally.
And then kind of like smaller eyes. So they don't have, I always think of Mercury as being like bigger eyes. And so they don't have any mercurial in their big three. So I think those are a little bit sharper, more focused. But yeah, that was definitely one that I was like, that's crazy. I never would have put those two together.
Right. But then when you see their pictures side by side, you're like, I see it. And not just that, it's like this Sagittarius, a vibe of just being like kind of open and jovial and like laid back. But then I think if you got to know them, that Capricorn moon, they both do come across like they would be serious in a one-on-one setting, but they're very open when they're like entertaining or at like events or something. I kind of
absolutely
feel that with both of them. I could see that. And then Jesse Metcalf and Ellen Burstyn, Libra rising, Sagittarius sun, Libra moon. And Jesse, I mentioned this before. So I had like a guest role one day on the show Dallas when they did like the remake. many years ago. And I actually worked with, my scene was with Jesse Metcalf. And so I worked with him and we got to chat. And one of the things I noticed about him was I was like, he looks really different than anyone I've ever seen. And this is going to sound so strange, but you actually mentioned it in the post about how it's like the features are like closer to the center of the face. He almost looks like a doll. And I know that sounds so weird. It was like a doll face, like very refined features that I was like, no wonder he probably looks great on camera. Very different, like stands out.
That's exactly
And
what I thought.
do you think that the Libra rising, I'm sorry, does he have a Libra moon or do they have Aries moon?
Aries moon.
Okay, I said that wrong. With the Aries moon, do you think that there's something about the polarity of Libra and Aries that could create balance?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's something I haven't considered, but I think that it definitely could, kind of in the same way that, like, if you lean too heavily in one direction, you might look maybe a little out of balance, a little bit more, not in a bad way, but maybe in more of like a high fashion model type where like the features are a little bit more prominent and like something
Giselle.
distinct. Yes.
Like someone like her, yeah,
Versus
sharper.
something like this, which is a little bit more stereotypically, beautiful. I mean, Libra rising itself doesn't hurt with that.
Right. Like they're all
But-
very proportional. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then, and the reason I thought of that was because of our next little, twin couple that is, now this one's just shocking because they look exactly alike, in my opinion. Paul Walker and Chris Pine, because they have Virgo rising, Virgo sun, and Pisces moon. So there's that Virgo Pisces polarity. And then that's what made me think, could that be a thing? Like, because they are very balanced looking.
Yeah. I think that definitely makes sense.
Just theorizing over here. We're just coming up with theories.
I love it. I just knock these out. And so I never like stop to really think about things like that. And now I'm going through and I'm like, oh yeah, actually, I like it.
My Scorpio moon. I'm just like mining over here.
I love it.
Okay, so now I would love to hear your take on how different planets, because like your moon sign and maybe your sun sign, like how these different planetary placements would impact someone's overall vibe or aesthetic. Because I just feel like rising sign is typically like accepted as like how we look. But what have you found? Like, do you think that other things also have a big impact?
I think that rising sign it's been the easiest for me to see similarities with. Part of that is just because we don't have birth times for a ton of celebrities. And so we can only work with what we have. And then we're able to find patterns, I think, a little bit easier. When I was doing my research for my presentation with Nightlight, I read something that I think Ptolemy said, which was that this theorized that the sun and the moon could provide shading. And I think that's kind of interesting. I've shared all posts for rising signs, and I'm still working my way through the moon signs. But what I've found with the moon signs is that it tends to, I think, be more focused on the eyes. I think that you can see the moon maybe more clearly through the eyes. And the rising sign more so owns maybe the facial expressions, the facial features. And so for the moon, not only do I have to look a little deeper because there's so many, Taurus moons to look at, say, but I think you have to look more closely to see that planetary placement come through.
Interesting. I wonder if the moon could also be part of like the aura, like the unexplainable vibe you feel from someone.
I think so.
Like in this image that you have on your Instagram for Aquarius moons, you have Nina Dobrev, Sarah Paulson, Viola Davis, Maya Rudolph, Maggie Gyllenhaal. And I would never like put those people together, like just off, first glance. But then when you kind of, I don't know, like look at them and kind of think about each of them and like how they are in their films or movies or on the red carpet, I feel like a sort of like jolly kindness and like some fun, but also like a serious shade. Like I feel their vibe is similar.
Yeah.
I really do.
It's like they have perspective almost, like they've like that Buddha almost, like I've gained a little bit of perspective and so I'm chill, that's kind of the aura I get. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes. The Aquarius moon, the wise Buddha. For sure. The wise beta vibe. I feel that. That's so fun. And then what about like romantic compatibility or like attraction? Have you noticed any certain placements that gravitate towards each other or anything along those lines or are like repelled by each other? That's another one. That's a
Yeah.
fun one.
I mean, I've wanted so long to do like some work with synastry in this area and to play around with that. I have some couples on here that share the same like sun and rising or same sun and moon. I was really excited to see that Bennifer share the same sun and moon,
Wow.
which was like, wow, couple Leos, like,
Couple of
loving on each
Leos.
other.
Yep. With Scorpio moons. Wow.
Yep. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think that like the funny thing there is that like it would make sense almost that two Leos would want to be in a relationship with each other. Just the Leo self-love and might be looking for similar qualities in their partner that they have. Total speculation, but that's something I've thought about. And I
could see
think,
that.
It like also, I think it could come down to like planets in the first house, maybe, and that being attractive forces. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I keep looking out for couples in my searches.
Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting. And I like what you said about how you could see that working with Ben and Jen, like in particular, because yeah, like if you think about it, two Leos for sure, like they love themselves, they're big personalities. And then with a Scorpio moon, there's so much of a need for like connection and like depth and like to really feel like someone is like your person. I feel like that could be challenging to do with anyone else that doesn't have the same placements because it's such a unique, just and like kind of like in your own self, like trying to satisfy those two needs and balance them. I feel like it'd be hard to find someone else to understand that unless they have the same placements.
Very true.
It's interesting.
It could also be volatile, and we've seen that with them
Sure.
too,
Right.
The on
Hopefully
and
they've
off.
matured.
True. Yes.
And this time around, they're like, okay, now we're really ready. We
Yeah.
get it. Yeah. Do you find that people who have like more harmonious placements within themselves, like for example, their big three is all like, just compatible signs that are traditionally considered compatible versus someone who would have something like, Leo and Scorpio within themselves, not considered the most compatible. Even just when you're dealing with yourself, you might have a lot of inner conflict. Have you seen that to be something that like you've noticed when you've just been looking at all these different charts?
I guess I haven't noticed it, but in my own life, my fiance, we balance each other out. Like I have a lot of Mercury in my chart, a lot of air, and then so I have a Gemini sun, Libra moon, Virgo rising, and he has a Pisces sun, Sagittarius moon, Cancer rising. And so he has more of the Jupiterian influence. And so like his Jupiter balances my like he has got a lot of Jupiter, I have a lot of Mercury. And so like there's like a balancing thing that happens with us.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I could see that being really positive. It's like an uplifting yet grounded energy, probably when you come together.
Yes.
That's nice. That's nice. We love that. We love that. And then I was like looking for myself to see like if anyone shares, my big three, because you just can't help it. Once you see, you're like, ooh, does anybody have mine? The only person that has mine is like a French, like one of like the first French presidents or something. Like it's not a celebrity. It's not a glamorous thing. I mean, it's very cool, but and then Jenny McCarthy has Aquarius rising, Virgo, Virgo moon, Scorpio sun. So those are like switched because I have the Virgo sun, Scorpio moon. Do you think that like having a different order, but the same big three would like, manifest in subtle but obvious ways? Or like, what's your take on that?
I think so. Because I think you kind of look like Jenny McCarthy. Like I could see that.
Well, I like her style a lot.
Yeah.
I actually was laughing when I saw it because I was like, oh my God, when I was thinking of doing like the photo shoot for the cover of this podcast, I was looking at some of like the cute outfits that she wears on like the Masked Singer or whatever. That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I like the fun stuff that I was like, that is really weird that would be like my semi
Yeah.
cosmic twin.
I think people have asked me that question before, and so it makes me kind of want to start playing around with it with my posts.
Mhm.
I think, yeah, if you have like the same archetypal energies coming together, even if they're coming together in different ways, I think it makes sense that they would manifest similarly for sure.
So interesting.
Yeah.
And then would you mind, before we go, would you mind describing the different zodiac signs and the way that they look? Just so people can listen for themselves and for their own birth charts. And will you kind of like describe how someone could start to think of it like in their own chart, or want to, look for it, or if they want to like kind of get into it and start applying it?
Yeah, I think the hard thing for me is that like sometimes I'll compare like Leo sun versus Leo rising and they manifest differently. Like they
Mhm.
definitely look different. Sometimes you can just like, guess someone's sign just by feeling their energy. Like, you know what Leo energy is like. And so you might be able to say, okay, you have Leo somewhere in your big three. I don't know which one, but I'm seeing it on your face probably and in your energy.
Mhm.
Um, but real fast, I think so. Aries tends to have more, I think, sharper features. Um, I think I always think about like kind of downturned brows with Aries, especially Aries rising. There's this martial kind of energy, ready for a fight, excited for a fight, and not one, to give up. Taurus is, as I mentioned earlier, I tend to notice like a similar nose for them, and a wideness to the face, softness to the features, Venusian, gorgeous.
My
Oh,
husband has
and
Taurus rising, and I feel like he's very gorgeous.
yeah. It's like
It's like
their birthright.
there's just something about them. Yeah. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh,
Oh yeah, no. Taurus risings, I feel like sometimes also have like kind of like soft eyes, like they're just like relaxed and
yes."
calm and um I love that.
Mhm.
Geminis, like I said earlier as well, I think have bigger eyes. I think that's just for Mercury in general, kind of taking in the world. I think also, well, they're shorter. I think that Geminis just tend to be kind of shorter and pixie like. It's not always
Yes.
the case, but
I've noticed that too. Like Emma Chamberlain. She's
yeah.
well,
Hmm.
she has, yeah, Gemini sun.
Yep.
She has such a Gemini vibe.
Like a
Refined
pixie.
features, the pixiness.
Hmm.
She's so smart and quick. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I think that's Gemini. I think Cancer, lunar, which means like sunken, it could be sunken features, like kind of craters. Um, but also just like stunning. I always think Cancers are just like have the most elegant features.
Like Margot Robbie. She's a Cancer
Mhm.
rising.
Yep. Liv Tyler has Cancer sun and rising. I
She's
think,
so beautiful. I've
yeah.
always thought she was beautiful. A lot of
Hmm.
softness to her face for sure.
Yep. Ethereal kind of.
Very.
Leo, I think, I always think there's like a strong brow, strong forehead, kind of
Mhm.
like they're obviously confident, um, you know, leonine. There's something about the lion in their features, and good hair. Always good hair with Leo.
Totally.
Oh yeah. Can't underestimate the hair when
Mhm.
trying to look for a Leo. Virgo, more pinched features. I make a joke with my Virgo rising post that I just show them with their resting bitch face.
Oh,
And I
yes.
can do that because I'm a Virgo rising. It's, Virgos are constantly analyzing, and so you'll just see that in their features.
Mhm.
They're focused, they're in it. But also like stunning. The archetype of the virgin, the maiden. So young and cerebral. Um, and then Libra, balanced. It's true that I think there's always more symmetrical features with those that have prominent Libra placements.
Mhm.
Um, Romy Schneider has like a ton of Libra, I think, and she just is one of the most gorgeous people who ever lived. And there's just, the balance. It's hard to always know who a Libra is because it's just so perfect. And so there's no discerning features. It's just like perfect balance among the features.
Wow. Like
So if you don't
Beyonce is
know,
Libra rising, and
Hmm.
she, right? And she has that Virgo
Yes.
sun at Libra rising. I feel like her features are very, nothing really like stands out, but it's like,
Mhm.
I think someone
Proportion.
applied the what is it when they measure the face, like Bella
The
Hadid.
golden ratio.
Thank you. The golden
Yeah.
ratio. She was also one of the people that they said had one of the most perfect symmetrical faces. So to
Yep.
your point, Libra rising.
Bella Hadid is a Virgo sun, so
Beautiful maiden vibes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Scorpio intense, which is hard to necessarily know what that looks like, but I always think sharp eyes, piercing gaze, very present is always something I think of with Scorpio, is that they're right there with you. Their eyes aren't going to be airy eyes. They're not somewhere else. They're right in the moment, and you can see that. I do think sometimes they have like lighter colored eyes. I don't think science would necessarily corroborate that, but that's something I've seen, like icy. And then they tend to, I think, have good cheekbones too. I don't know why, but something I've seen. Sagittarius, like we were talking about earlier, longer features, jovial, more focused eyes, like not necessarily in an intense way, but just the archer has let they're aiming for one fixed point. And they tend to be taller. So if Gemini is shorter, Sagittarius is the tall giant.
The polarity.
Yeah.
Well, and Jennifer Lawrence is a Sagittarius rising. She gives
Mm-hmm.
me Sagittarius rising vibes, just from the way she looks to the way that she like moves. And she, it's like she's like the arrow. Like she's always like knowing where she's going or something.
Yes.
Even just in
Absolutely.
a combo. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then Capricorn, great bone structure. Capricorn rules the bones. And so they just, I think, always have just the best cheekbones and bone structure. They also, I think, tend to have like a similar nose that is just very prominent. And that's something I've been picking up on lately. I didn't notice it before. But you'll know it if you see it. And I think that, they're very beautiful. Sometimes I feel like they have dark features, but that's not always the case. But I've noticed that, they're at the darkest point of the year, and you can sometimes see that in their features, sort of. And then Aquarius, which is near and dear to my heart because that was the first sign that I noticed patterns in.
No way.
Yeah, I noticed that like my cousin looked like Jennifer Aniston, and then my coworker did, and they had like the same kind of eyes that were glistening and like kind of like far away, sort of. And so that's one quality that I see.
Wow.
I think they always look relaxed, but just like super smart. I don't know how to describe it. I think Aquarius men kind of look like owls, like in an interesting way, like the brows. It's just something that I've noticed. It's like arched kind of brows. And then finally Pisces, I think, is like the easiest because there's a fishy quality. My partner's a Pisces. But in like the sense of like big lips, sleepy eyes, and often a prominent chin, which is interesting. But they always look so dreamy, like Rihanna, just like those soft, dreamy eyes, very creative. So yeah, that's my roster.
God, and that's everybody. Well, that is so interesting and so much fun. Thank you for like just sharing your knowledge, your advice, your account, honestly, with the world.